Hello. I get this question a lot. How do you make your inflatables so bright? So I'm going to show you how I do this in replacing the factory lights with some custom corn cob LEDs. I'll show you which ones it is and I'll provide a link shortly. But here's a picture of the inflatable as it is from the factory and a little video. Here's your inflatable. And so here you can just kind of see how exactly dark the factory light is in this camera view here. All right, so we're here on the bench and we've brought the inflatable out, and so I've opened it up, and this is the little LED light that is included with these inflatables. So you can see it's got an epoxy coating here with the two power wires coming in, and the power wires here come off of the fan motor. So they're actually just tagged with the power wires that feed the fan motor itself. But this is the light that we're going to look at. All right, so here I've powered up the light itself. So you can see this is the light. And over time, this little element here will go bad and it will get very, very dim and eventually just go out completely. So you have no light at all emitting from your inflatable. Sometimes they have 2 or 3 of these. Most have 1. The wattage on this is very, very, very low, but this is what is included with the factory on these. So for us, we're going to replace it. What we're going to replace it with, go ahead and, is on Amazon. I'll include a link below, but they're by Rehu. And these are G4 3 watt 12 volt silicon gel coated LEDs. Commonly they're called corn cob because if you open them up they look like a corn cob. So let's pull one of these out. So if we take a closer look at this LED here, you can see this looks, focus, so this looks like a corn cob, and that's what this light is here. So in this there is a little voltage regulator and a system for it to convert the power internally. There's a very large capacitor in here and then some other resistors. The beauty of this is this, and you can kind of see it here, but it is 12 volts AC. So our Gemmy lights here, they're DC, direct current. So, direct current is just voltage that flows one way. AC voltage flows in a sine wave either way. The reason this has a large capacitor is so it will level out the AC voltage going to this. And where you see 12 volts AC a lot is in the yard lights. So if you've got yard lights, decoration, underground lighting, or yard lights, that's where these are commonly found. And those are 12 volts AC. So this little board converts the AC into DC, so it doesn't matter. There's no polarity requirement for these 2 pins here. So we're going to get into actually how we replace this and how we wire this up. So the first thing we're going to do is we've got our light ready. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this in place. I'm not going to take it out. We could take it out if we wanted to, but I need somewhere to attach the light. So all I'm going to do is come in here and I am going to snip the wires. Now if you wanted to save this light for something else, snip it down here. Give you a little bit of length of wire to work with, but I'm not worried about saving it at all. So I'm just going to cut it right off right there so it's completely out of the way. So now I'm going to move this out of the way so I can pull out the soldering iron. Okay, so I've got the soldering iron, or got that out of the way. I got my wire right here. I got my light. There's a couple of things that we're going to need. You need your wire cutters. I use a set of wire strippers. You can use any kind of wire stripper you like, but I like these kind of wire strippers right here. You need some solder And so I use this a lot. So this is 6040 lead-based solder. I like the lead-based solders because it flows much better than the lead-free solders. You're going to need some flux. So I use flux number 135. This is a paste flux, and you can see I use it for coating the wires, and you see I poke a lot of wires down in there. And I actually have a tin pot right here, up here in the shot, that I use for tinning the wires. So just to make it easy, I do that for all my wires. But for this, we're just going to use my trusty old soldering iron that I have right here off the side of the screen, and we're going to make this happen. Now you do need some helping hands. So I cheat just a little bit. I have a very large socket with an adapter in it. Great weight. The light fits perfectly in that 1/2-inch drive on my big 1 3/4 socket with the adapter. Fits perfectly. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here. The first thing that I want to do is I want to come in and strip the wires. So we're going to come in and we're going to strip these wires down like so. So I just need to strip them just a little bit, and actually I need to just strip them just a little bit more. I didn't get enough wire to wrap around the leg. So that's one of the tricks, is wrapping that wire around the leg. So I'm going to take and I'm going to separate the wires. So I'm going to kind of spread them out just a little bit, because there's one thing that we need to add: heat shrink. So I use a heat shrink that's got a hot melt glue inside of it. I've already pre-cut these to lengths, but you can get these on different sources, Amazon, but I cut them to length. So when we get ready to solder this, we'll need to add the heat shrink. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to get me a piece of solder to work with. So now I got my piece of solder to work with, and I'm going to take my soldering iron, and I'm going to clean the tip first, off screen. So now I've got a very nice clean tip. And the first thing I'm going to do is, these pins have already been soldered once, but they're soldered with lead-free solder. So I'm going to just add a little bit of the solder that we're going to use to this. And all I'm going to do is just touch it. Just touching it just a little bit. Same thing right there, just touching it. And you see it puts a little bulb of solder right there on the pin, which is perfectly fine. So now I've got just a little bit of solder, a little more than I need right there on that side there. So I'm just going to come in here, I'm going to take the solder and just kind of wipe it right off, and then come down here, wipe on that pin right there. And now I've got, those pins are soldered. Next, we're going to take our wire, and you see this wire is very, very, very fine. It's very thin. You see right here, pull it up, but I mean it's very thin, it's very fine wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flux, just so I can get some on it, and I'm going to just wipe the wire through the flux. Because if I try to stick it in there, it's just going to do that and get a little bit on my thumb here, and I'm just going to wipe the wire with the flux. So now I'm going to take my heat shrink, like so. I'm going to spread my wires out a little bit. It doesn't hurt to spread them out. Spread that out a little bit, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to take this wire, and I'm going to very carefully, my hands are greasy, but I'm just going to very carefully wrap it around the pin. Just a couple of turns here. I'm going to get me a little screwdriver just to help kind of spin that wire around that pin. Doesn't have to be perfect. But again, you're just kind of just wrapping around it, because that's not your connection. Your connection is going to be when you solder it, right? So now I'm going to take the other piece of heat shrink, and I'm going to slide it down here. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to very carefully wrap that wire around, and just to make it easier to get it around like so. My dogs are going crazy, but I'm going to just kind of wrap those around there. And we can clean those up a little bit later with the cutters if we need it. But now you can see I've got, focus, I've got the wires just wrapped around the pins. So now I'm going to put it in my holder, my helping hands holder there, and I'm going to take my solder, I'm going to take my soldering iron, and right now my tip on my soldering iron needs cleaning. So I'm just going to clean it up just a little bit, just to make sure that it's clean, and then I'm just going to come in here and I am going to just touch that. So I'm just heating it up and I'm just touching it. Again, you saw how quick that was. That wasn't long at all, right? Not long at all. And you can see that wire is attached. If you do it too long, you'll end up melting the wire in the insulation or causing the pins to come loose. And you can see those wires, they're soldered, they're connected. And now the part that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this heat shrink and I'm going to slide it up on there, just like that. And I've got my heat shrink gun, so I've got the good one. And just to make sure, and again, you can use a torch. I have a torch somewhere. So you can use a little torch like this to melt the heat shrink. I don't like using that because it can melt too much. You can use the larger hot air guns, but again, like this one here, but with the wire, being so small, that can cause you to melt that wire very easily if you hold it up there too long. So what I use is I've got the hot air station, and all I'm going to do is let that get good and hot. Oh, yep, that's warm. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to very carefully, and you can see the hot air station is blinking my light, but I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to start at the bottom and just work my way around and let the heat shrink melt and shrink. And again, I'm using the glue embedded, so what this is going to do is it's going to actually glue itself down. So it makes a real good tight bond, and I will leave a link for the glue ones that I use. But that's done. Let that cool down there in the station, and I'll go ahead and pull this out. And you can see here that this joint is now, the wires are on there, they're nice soldered, and they're done. So how bright is this, right? So this gets pretty bright. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug up the power. To the light. Plug it up. And you can see that is very, very bright compared to what the old LED was, right? It is just massively bright. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and power it down, and let's show you how I put it in. So I'm gonna clear off the station and I'll be right back. So one question is this is a big bulb. It's much, much larger comparing to what we just disconnected, right? So how much power is this going to use? So I'm going to pull out my DC voltmeter right here. So this is a DC voltmeter and a DC amp meter. If you're doing Christmas lights, you're doing decorations, pixels, I highly recommend you get one that does DC. So right now we don't have anything, just ambient measurements from everything that I've got around here. But I'm going to go ahead and plug this light back in, and let's see how many amps it's getting. So remember, this is 3 watts at 12 volts. If we do Ohm's law, that's 0.25 amps, so a quarter of an amp. So if I plug it in, see what we got. We've got 0.11 amps. So basically 0.1112 amps. So again, this is not going to add any additional load that the motor, that the power supply for the Gemmy can't handle. Now, if you've got inflatables that have more than one of these lights, then you could start getting into that, but most of them, a quarter amp over is not going to affect much. So, 1, 2 lights, you're okay. 3 lights, you may not be. You may have to increase or get a larger size power supply. So let's go ahead and move this out of the way, move my helping hand out of the way, and we're going to bring Otto back to the table, and we're going to show you how we put him in. So we got Otto. Where's his butt? Let's find his butt. There's his eyes. We need his butt. All right, so here's Otto's, again, the fan. So I need to go in here and I need to get that light. I cut that wire, so I got nothing to pull on now. So I'm going to come in here, and now I've got the light. So this is the light that we're going in. So don't make this mistake. I've made this one too many times, getting my wires crossed. So I want to make sure that the power wire is outside of the inflatable and out of the way, and then that I'm clear and my wire here is not hung up on anything. So now, red hat, I know that's the top. So what I'm going to do is come in here and I'm going to attach it just like this. So and I'm going to grab a couple of zip ties out of my drawer. And while I take the zip tie here, I'm going to take, and all I'm going to do is wrap the zip tie around the square block, like so. And attach it at the top. So there, I got one attached at the top. And then you can, then I like to attach one at the bottom. And then I like to do one more little thing just to make sure that it's not going to go anywhere. So get my zip ties on there, get that tightened down. Take my side cutters here, and I'm just going to snip those off flush. So I like using the flush cutters. So those are out of the way. And so now my light is mounted and it's ready to go back in. What I like to do to ensure that it's not going to go anywhere is come in here and just take a little bit of hot glue and just add a little bit of hot glue right there on each side. That's going to ensure that the light, once that dries, I'll wait for it to dry before I put it back in there, but ensure that it doesn't move and those wire ties don't come off. So next, after this is dried, we're going to go ahead and slide it back up in there and power it up, and I'm going to go take it out to the yard and show you what it looks like. All right, so I'm actually using the exact same settings on my camera as I was before. And you can see just how big of a difference that one light makes inside of this inflatable. It's massive, and you can see here, we can get around the back and you can see it really makes it pop. And then the color, having that color of the, that warm white that I use, I think it makes the inflatables just look so much better. There goes my cat. And it just really makes these guys pop out. So again, I hope this helps somebody. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my little video, and I'll put up a little screenshot of them side by side. So here's a shot of the two different levels side by side. And again, thank you for watching this, and I hope this helps you. I am with the Minion House.